Okay, then, well, good morning, everyone, again. We are Bilink. Me, Ana Monserrat, and Marta Rojas, that just connected, will be giving today's training. So just a few words on Bilink. For those of you who don't know us, we're a small consultancy firm based in Barcelona. We specialize in international financing and especially EU funding. So we can provide support in all phases of the project cycle to different types of clients, from the formulation to evaluation and closure phases. And we're one of the partners of the ENACT project. So some of the services that we offer from this formulation towards implementation is diagnosis and strategy, well, thinking of project ideas, helping clients define their strategy and accessing funding. We also help in the design and drafting of proposals. And then we're in the whole phase during the negotiation and contractualization once the project is accepted. And we also provide this support to implementation, or even as project partners, we implement our own share of the project. We recently opened a new service, which is communication and dissemination. So we also have now specialized members in our team that have a background in communication. So we also do that mostly in the framework of EU projects. And last but not least, we also do evaluation and closing. We also offer trainings and capacity buildings, such as today. And we also give other general consulting services. Okay, just so you know a bit who we are and our background. So what are we going to do today? There's two main blocks of this session. So the first block is a general map of EU funds and programs for you to understand your European funding landscape a little bit better. And there's a second part, let's say. It's not like it's two completely different sections, but we like to call it that way because we sometimes have given it in different sessions. Then there's more the strategy of how to participate in EU programs. So it's going to be a little bit different. And of course, we're going to have a break between the two. So you can keep up and it's not too long. So for the first part, we're going to do this overview first of EU funds and modalities. And then we're going to show you two types of different programs. So the thematic programs on one hand, and then we're going to show you in, some small aspects, because we don't have time to get into a lot of detail, but a bit of an overview on the decentralized programs, which are mostly Interreg. Then for the second section, for the participation strategy, we're going to walk you through all the main phases of the start of thinking of an idea to presenting a project proposal. So we can, in four big chunks, define that in these four phases that you see on screen. So first, we're going to start with the preparation phase, then research, then association phase. So what roles are there in a partnership? How do you choose your partners, etc.? And last, we have the formulation phase. So that's, when you start already, you have your idea, you have your partnership, and you start writing a proposal for a specific program. So before we get into any more detail, I'm going to stop presenting for a second. We wanted to ask you a question to know a bit your expertise with EU funds. So if you have your mobiles nearby, 1 second, let me share the Slido. Okay, can you either join at slido.com and enter the code, or just scan the QR code? We are only going to have few questions on Slido, and now we're only having one, so it's going to be short. But this way you can join and answer on screen. Okay, so the question is simple, and since for now we are not that many people, you can also open your microphone and just answer directly, or you can answer through Slido. We wanted to know a bit what motivates your organization to access EU funding, participate in EU projects, and be in today's training, also to understand a bit your background in participating in projects. So feel free to write it in the Slido, or either to just open your microphone and let us know, whatever you prefer. Otherwise, I'll give you some minutes. Okay, development of the organization. New connections. Okay, you see extra funding for scientific projects. Okay, here there's one in Catalan that they never thought of doing a project yet, but they're checking if it would be a possibility to maybe access EU funds. Okay, great. Any more answers? Anybody want to add something to it? Does anybody have previous experience, or it's your first time maybe participating in EU funding? Okay, well, if you have any other comments or anything to add later, feel free to write in the chat or to open your microphone, okay? Okay, then we can go back.
Can I give a note?
Oh, yes, of course.
During all of experience with EU funding, only one note that it's getting more difficult every year. You haven't noticed that?
Yes, it's true. There's more competition, and we that work with EU funding every day, we have seen it, how suddenly it has tripled the amount of applications that programs are receiving. Also, partly probably due to the insertion of AI and people being less afraid maybe to present proposals because they have this support of the tool. So yeah, it's getting a bit more competitive, but I think that it shouldn't demotivate you to participate. And if you know how to, there's still big chances of getting funding. You just need to know how to do it. But yeah,
we're gonna try to
we're gonna
respond
try
to that. But it is true that the interruption of artificial intelligence in the sector is really modifying the way we used to work and prepare projects. No? So the European Commission is reacting to that in a way, and we are seeing that some programs are already introducing measures to not to avoid the use of artificial intelligence, because that's never gonna happen. It's a technology that's staying for good, but at least to try to understand whether the organizations behind this application that has been probably created and curated by artificial intelligence, the organizations that are behind this proposal are able and have the technical capacity to we'll see certain changes for sure coming in the next years. So it's my turn, right, Anna?
Yes,
right now?
I think you can just grab the control of the presentation.
So I'm going to take control on that. So we are going to start by having a short overview of European funds and its modalities. So basically here what we intend to give you is an understanding of what are the financial instruments and modalities that the European Commission works with. And then a short overview, because giving you a comprehensive overview will take us all the morning, of all the European programs that are there, or the most let's say, the flagship ones. So starting with this overview, basically, we just wanted to introduce certain concepts that arise when starting working with European financing. So we've got different types of instruments, of modalities. We've got financial instruments that work through loans and guarantees and other type of different instruments that have been devised for the ecosystem of stakeholders that the European Commission works with. So entrepreneurs, startups, micro companies, small and medium-sized enterprises, and even larger businesses. So these modalities adapt to the different stakeholders and types of the of entities of the ecosystem. So what we know is that basically more than 200,000 businesses are being supported every year through European Commission financial instruments that connect the European Commission to this ecosystem of SMEs through intermediary banks in the different state members. So this is one way to work with the European Commission through this type of financial instruments, through intermediaries and banks. Basically, the biggest program is InvestEU, and that will probably be subject to change with the new programming period, because that's something important that you also need to know. But the European Commission organizes its budget for financing access, facilitating access to financing and funding through different programming periods. So programming periods that last 7 years. Currently, we are in the ending the financing period that goes from 2020 to 2027. So that obviously has an impact on the availability of open calls through these programs that we will talk about. So another another modality that the European Union works with is through public tenders, basically. So the European Union has to accomplish an endeavor, and for that decides to launch a call for tender to search for a specific supplier. So that's another competitive way of facilitating. Sorry, my cat is around here. Facilitating access and also decentralizing the provision of service from the European Union and its agencies to other stakeholders in the ecosystem. So basically, these call for tenders are being launched to implement a specific part of a project or a program, and that the European Union wants to decentralize and wants to do it through a work, a service, a supply. And there's a specific portal where all tenders are being published. So any type of company can participate in this, whether as a part of a consortium or alone, depending on the type of opportunity and depending on obviously the expertise of the SME. So and then we go on to subsidies. So this third modality, which the European Union provides resources to entities to implement specific activities as well that relate to the endeavor of the European Commission. So again, decentralizing its action through this call for proposals, where it asks the entities to propose a project idea to implement a specific project. Here, like in the tenders, we work through a competitive call with a specific deadline, and within this time frame, we need to submit a project idea that fits well into the objectives of the call for proposals. So that are the main three types that we wanted to introduce. And well, basically today we will focus very much on the third instrument, which is the subsidies, and these call for proposals that are being launched within the framework of a specific program. So here we already introduced some concepts that we need to clarify because sometimes are not sufficiently understood by the audience. We are pretty used to work with this jargon, but sometimes it comes new to the people, no? So it's interesting to differentiate. So the program is basically this instrument that has been set by the European Commission according to its strategies and priorities that comes from this multi-year programming framework that we were talking about, where it decides a specific allocation of financing and sets priorities. No? So let's say a program would be, to name one that is very well known, it's Erasmus Plus, for instance. No? So Erasmus Plus is about training, education, and youth. No? So that's the main priorities or the main elements that are being tackled, addressed through the program of Erasmus Plus, and that means that this tackles all challenges related to adult education, to youth participation, and so on. And other programs that you probably heard about if we are talking about research, as some people pointed at the beginning, no, that so Horizon Europe, then we have Creative Europe, we have territorial cooperation, no, all the variety spectrum of Interregs. And then from these programs is where we get to the projects. No? So the programs launch specific calls that can be launched on an annual basis, can be multiple, can be depending on the program. No? So Erasmus Plus, for instance, normally launches an annual call where it contains all the specific calls according to the key actions that it funds. Creative Europe, on the other hand, it works on a different manner. What we want to say here is that the program launches specific calls for proposals, and from these calls for proposals, we fund specific European projects. No? So with a specific idea, to be driven by specific entities towards the objective that has been set. So these projects are selected through this competitive call we were talking about. And having said a bit the jargon, we move on the types of European programs. And I think, Anna, it's Anna, it's still my turn. Sorry, sorry, I messed it. So different type of programs again. No? So I was already mentioning the possibility of having different functions, different way of operating the call for proposals according to the programs. But we also have two typologies of programs that we would like to highlight before. No? So we have the thematic programs, which are directly managed by the European Commission. And then we have decentralized programs. So decentralized programs that are being given the management to different authorities, normally regions, states, that take the responsibility of managing the program according to the geographical eligibility of that. No? So in this slide, you can see the Interreg programs, no, which work on a decentralized basis. So it's not, let's say, Brussels having the biggest say on that, but it's basically also the member states managing the processes and deciding on how to implement the programs, obviously according to the priorities that come from Brussels. But here what we see, for instance, is a specific Interreg program called Euromed, which covers the European Mediterranean region. So its secretariat is based in Marseille, because the region of PACA in France, it's the one that is managing the Euromed implementation. Okay, so there's a specific secretariat based in the region of Provence-Alpes-Côte d'Azur that manages the implementation of the program. So this is an important fact to highlight, because depending on how this program is managed, whether it is centralized or decentralized, we will have to address a different type of managing authority. So let's say that in Brussels we have a specific agencies like EISMEA in the case of the single market program, whereas for the Interreg programs we will have a secretariat which is based in the region or the nation. Okay, so that's one important thing to highlight. Then there are other things that influence in the programs, as I was saying, and how those are implemented. Obviously, that has to do with the strategies that are being, let's say, informed from the European Commission. So in what concerns today, in specific to what we are working through ENACT, which is the supporting the digital innovation and digital social innovation in the agri-food sector, we would like to highlight these strategies. So basically, this intersection between the agri-food sector and the social economy, which drives which type of funding opportunities we will have. So basically what needs to be highlighted is all strategies that concern agri-food policies and businesses, and then the European social pillar. And then so here hanging different verticals or pillars which concern social inclusion, fair employment, sustainability, and community empowerment. So this is important because when we always propose an initiative to the European Commission through this competitive call for proposals, and we do it in a sector that is related to what you have in the slide, we will have to relate to the specific policy priorities and strategies, flagship strategies that the European Union has in place. So as I mentioned already, the European social pillar, probably the most important one when it comes to talking about social economy, as it promotes an economy that works for the people. We focus on social inclusion, so trying to fight and protect those most vulnerable, fair working conditions, and then social protection. So these principles also strongly align or influence how the agri-food sector evolves. So they play a clear role in EU social economy objectives. So basically in what we are talking today. So the overlapping of these two sectors, obviously, as I said, give plenty of funding opportunities across different EU programs, which we will see right now with Anna.
Okay, so yes, now we're jumping into the actual mapping of the programs. So we'll show you a bit of an overview. I'm not going to repeat what Marta said on the thematic and decentralized programs, but you see here, these are not all of them, but a few programs that we decided to explain a bit today that could be relevant for your organizations. For the thematic programs, we're going to see an overview of SMP, the Single Market Program, Digital Europe, Erasmus+, Horizon, and the I3 instrument. We left live program kind of in gray with a question mark because although there is still a call being open this year, as this programming period is ending, there are a lot of discussions ongoing as to whether the live program is going to keep existing with the new programming period. So as it's very much still in discussion, we thought it didn't make a lot of sense to present a program that either might be ending or might be integrating into something else. But we left it there for you to know it exists and to keep it in mind, although it's probably going to be the last year or last 2 years that there's going to be calls. And then we're going to jump into the decentralized programs. So it's going to be Interreg, and we're going to see Interreg Euromed, which is the European part of the Mediterranean. Then we're going to see POCTEFA, which is France, Spain, Andorra. Then Interreg NextMed, which is the transnational cooperation program, both in the north and the south of the Mediterranean. And finally, we're also going to see Interreg Sudoe, for those of you in Portugal, Spain, or a part of France. Okay. So jumping into the thematic programs, first of all, we're going to see Erasmus Plus. Erasmus Plus, you probably heard of it. It's the program for education, training, youth, and sport. And basically, there's these main strands of interest you can see below. There's a key action 1, which is what you all probably heard of already if you haven't done so yourselves, which is the mobility of individuals. This is the classic Erasmus of university exchanges, etc. That's not what we're going to be seeing today. Then we have the key action 2, which is the one we're going to focus on, and that's more related to the types of projects that we're explaining. So the key action 2 is cooperation between organizations and institutions. And here are the cooperation projects that we talk about when we discuss Erasmus+. Nevertheless, there's also 2 other strands of interest that we're not going to see here, but just for you to keep in mind. There's a key action 3 that's more focused on policy making. And then there's the Jean Monnet program, which is focused on creating courses on the European Union. And again, we're not going to get into that. This is not so much related to European cooperation programs as such. So basically, the objectives are this: education, training, youth, and sport. So it's to support through this lifelong learning, educational, professional, and personal development of people in these sectors. And again, as most European programs, it also contributes to the sustainable growth, quality jobs, and social cohesion. Okay, it's strengthening European identity and citizenship. Here we have, you see below the screen, you'll get this presentation after the training. There's always some useful links in all the programs we present. So you have the link to the website, which you could just click on, use this as an actual map. And then we have another link to the Erasmus Plus project results. This is very useful when you're thinking about presenting a project for Erasmus Plus or any other EU program. Looking at the databases of previously funded projects not only gives you an idea of the type of initiatives that can be funded and that have been selected under this program, but also if you already have a project idea, it lets you see what has already been done, as usually they're never going to fund a project that's exactly like something that's already been done, but you can capitalize on, which means using a bit the lessons learned and the results of that project on doing something a little bit different or building on those past projects results, which is something that evaluators also like a lot. So it's always very useful to see what has been done. So we have the link here also to the Erasmus Plus project results platform. Okay. And then here you see in the screen, we do this for all of the programs. Again, this evaluation sector, it's kind of suggests, I think someone took control of my presentation. Okay. So this evaluation section, I don't know who is taking control of the presentation or how it's even possible. Okay, please, if I don't know how you have access to taking control of the presentation, please don't do so. Okay, so back where we were. The evaluation that you see here on screen, it's a bit of our experience as B-Link. It's a bit of a subjective evaluation, but it's based on our experience with these type of programs. So it's not something to keep in mind as an exact science, but it is a bit what we have seen while implementing these types of projects. So Erasmus Plus is a very good program to start with if you have no previous experience in EU funding or EU projects or EU programs. Why? Because the project size is relatively small, so it's quite manageable, and also the competitiveness of the calls is not as harsh as other EU programs where the competitiveness is way worse. So it's a good place to start. The program, the type of projects that are funded, they're usually, even though they have their complexity, they're pretty okay to manage. So it's a very good entry choice for new organizations. So as we put here, the recommended previous experience is you can be a beginner, and it's still a good program to start. I see the Daniela. Don't worry, all good. So yeah, the budget for Key Action 2, which we were mentioning, which is the cooperation projects, usually is a lump sum of 120,000, 250,000, or 400,000 euros. And it's a lump sum, so that's the amount you get, and you implement the way you kind of need to for your project objectives. Here we have some extra links. So you have document library of the program, and you also have the program guide, which is very useful if you're thinking of presenting a proposal for this program. Here you have all the details on the program. So yeah, it's a good place to start. Another program that we're gonna see is the Single Market Program, which is a European program for the competitiveness and sustainability of enterprises. So obviously very relevant also for SMEs. The topic is market competitiveness and this sustainability of companies. And its objectives are to support and strengthen the governance functioning and competitiveness of the European single market. Here you have the strands of interest. Of course, you have the SME strand. Then we have the European Enterprise Network. You have the joint cluster initiatives, and you have another cluster that we're not going to see today. Mostly our interest for the Single Market Program for you guys will be the strand of interest related to SMEs, and of course the Euro clusters, but right now we're not going to see that in a lot of details. Anyway, as the last call also just closed. But here we have a link to the program website, and in the same way that we were explaining for Erasmus Plus, you also have a database of previous projects, which is the Cosma Data Hub and database, where you can find information of previous projects that have been funded to know the type of initiatives that are relevant for this program. The Single Market Program is a little more difficult than Erasmus Plus, which we would say that it's more of an intermediate program. So we do recommend, if you have never had experience with other EU programs, maybe not start with this one unless you go as a partner, maybe with another organization that is leading, then it could work. But it's a bit more complex than Erasmus. So the average project size is a little bit bigger, and the competitiveness is also a bit higher than Erasmus. So just to keep in mind. Nevertheless, it's still an accessible program. So you can, of course, think of presenting a proposal to the Single Market Program, even if you don't have a lot of previous experience. Another recommendation is to consult the work plan or the work program, where you have the list of all the calls for proposals that are going to be published that year. And you can also search for previous calls, not only projects, but also previous calls that have been open in the Funding and Tenders portal, which is where many programs upload all their information, they open the calls, etc., etc. And as it's mentioned here, since some of the calls are repeated annually or biannually, it does make sense to check previous calls to know more or less what will be expected in future calls that are not yet published. Other important aspects, although the final beneficiaries of this support to SME axis, which is one of the strands I was mentioning, are SMEs. There's also other intermediate entities that can form part of the consortium and also receive part of the grant. So that's also relevant to keep in mind while building your consortium. And last but not least, you have available here the link to the European IEP Help Desk. So if you have any questions or any information needs regarding the single market program, you can access this related to intellectual property, specifically European projects, to find out more information. And yeah, it's just useful as a resource. And I think now I'm back to you, Marta, if you want to take control.
Yes, so yeah, so about Horizon Europe, we just already introduced it, no, but basically this is one of the flagship programs of the European Commission, no? So it's
Sorry, Marta, I
Yeah.
still see the screen of the single market program. I don't know if it's me or if now, yes.
Now it's on
Yes.
Horizon. Okay, so it's it funds research and innovation. So it is basically the supporting all the array of stakeholders that support an innovative ecosystem in the European Commission. So from SMEs to large research centers, public authorities, universities, and other type of stakeholders. No, the topic is research and innovation. So for that, the paradigm is to engage the quadruple or even sextuple helix, which means academia, citizens, communities, government, private sector, and so on. So, as said, the objective is to strengthen European excellence in science and technology through its support for research and innovation by people and organizations. So with this, as I was saying, quadruple helix approach, or even larger helix approach with different groups of stakeholders. So there are different strands of interest. We think for the type of audience that we would face today, most important pillars are the global challenges and European industrial competitiveness, and the pillar on Innovative Europe, which contains the different clusters and missions that fund biodiversity and other topics that could relate to what we are talking today. So basically, our recommendations when it comes to Horizon Europe is that it's a very, 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 very competitive program. The success rate is very low. So let's say it's not a beginner-friendly program. And we would recommend to start with the tutelage of an experienced leader, ideally a specialist research organization that can coordinate the action. So projects must be ambitious and innovative. So the ambition and the innovative character of the project scores high. Also, the impact it is expected to have. So which kind the outcome expected should be proportionate to the scale of the project and its budget. So all proposals submitted to the calls must deal with the following topics: interdisciplinarity, the gender dimension, open science, and ethics. So for that, it's important that you check this RESOS, the European Code of Conduct for Research Integrity, which details what's expected. There are a few restrictions regarding the eligibility of entities that can be different. So that depends on the type of project that is funded. So there are three typologies: the research and innovation actions, innovation actions, and coordination and support. So this type of typology determines a bit who can apply or not to the calls. to the topics. That's how it's called in Horizon Europe. But normally, let's say that they are very open to participation from different type of stakeholders, and there are no requirements on that limit the capacity of SMEs to participate, for instance. So what I was saying, the ambition is important so as to demonstrate the impact of the project. So it is expected that you relate your impact to the key impact pathways framework, and that will be used in the evaluation of your proposal. Because of all that we've been mentioning, what we were saying, we don't recommend to start with Horizon Europe. There are other programs that Anna has mentioned before that are more accessible. So we recommend that you have expert level experience before you participate in a Horizon Europe project with an important role, because Horizon Europe can be very large projects. So the average project size tends to be very big. It could be a consortium of even 25 entities with more than 10 million euros. So in this kind of situation, that depends on which is your role. If you've got an expert role which is very limited, you could obviously participate. What we mention is if you want to be engaged in piloting implementation and a bigger role, that will demand obviously a bigger capacity and knowledge of how to operate within those. So as said, the competitiveness of the calls is very high, with success rates that average 5%. Regarding other instrument that is becoming very popular, which is the Interregional Innovation Investment, which falls under the same agency as Horizon Europe, so EISMEA. And supports as well innovation across Europe, focusing on joint areas of smart specialization on the path to commercialization. So different technology readiness levels. So this is another jargon that it's commonly, another concept that is commonly used by the European Commission, but also supporting innovation, and normally in connection with these smart specialization strategies that are being defined at regional level by the regions and in coordination with the European Commission. So that's important because not all industrial ecosystems or sectors could be part of your smart specialization strategy in your territory. So that would be different to prove relevance in that sense. So there are these three axes or strands of interest. So axis 1, financial support and advice for investments in interregional innovation projects. Axis 2, financial support for value chain development in less developed regions, integrating them into EU value chains. And when we mean less developed regions, we mean those that are listed according to the to DG Regio as less developed. Also referring to normally outermost and transition regions when it comes to this access. So regions that for instance, for Portugal, insular territories, or Spain as well, Canary Islands or Madeira or Azores in the case of Portugal. Then we have access to B, which is financial support for strengthening regional innovation ecosystems, developing capacity for interregional business cases. So basically here, developing an investment portfolio that supports innovation in the territories that are aligned in the initiative. So for the interregional innovation investment, basically also the project size is big, but will depend on the access you're working with. So for access 1, normally projects are very large, access 2 not so large, but the average budget could be around 6 million euros. The competitiveness of the call is very high. Average success rate 18%, but I think that we probably will have to modify it with the current with the latest and most recent notification of results of the calls that were launched in November 2025, where we've seen that applications with a score of 95 out of 100 have not been selected. So just to say a note on what we were just discussing at the beginning of the session, also how competitive is getting the participation in European calls with the use of artificial intelligence. So what we recommend in terms of experience in European projects is that at least you've had some experience, so rather advanced. In terms of recommendations, so it's important that you try to integrate less developed regions and do it in consortiums that also integrate more developed regions. So, for instance, if you're working on innovation in the agri-food sector in connection with digital platforms and other forms of digitalization. So let's say that it would be interesting to at different levels of progress within the regions that you cover through your partnerships. So we are talking about partnerships that could engage clusters, could engage other type of business support organizations for the agri-food sector, and the digitalization of it. Axis 1 strengthens existing value chain, while Axis 2 promotes the creation of new value chains in less developed regions, focusing on the diffusion and adaptation of innovation. So that would mean, for instance, a specific value chain that needs not tackle, let's say production or conservation, that the project tackles its development in a specific region where nothing is being done within this segment of the value chain. So both axes contemplate the inclusion in the partnership of SMEs that are responsible for carrying out the pilot investments. So one thing that is interesting about this project is that they support a portfolio of pilot investments that concern already specific SMEs with a type of innovation, with a solution that fits well within this objective of creating a new value chain, for instance, in that case, okay? For that, it is envisaged the use of FCDP, so financial support to third parties for these SMEs that drive these pilot investments. As said, these are large projects with dimensions that range between 2 to 10 million euros and partnerships that can be very wide and complex to manage. The co-funding depends a bit on the access, but normally it's 70% of co-financing, with the exception of the FCDP, which is fully covered. It's important before you start drafting or thinking on an idea for an interregional innovation investment program that you check on the S3 community of practice network and understand the thematic smart specialization partnerships that are already existing, so that you see what has been already done, but that can be also helpful to identify partners for your consortium. So that's an interesting resource you should be checking before moving on with this one. So another program that we wanted to mention, because we are talking about digital innovation and digitalization, is obviously Digital Europe. So quick and easy, it finances digital skills, infrastructures, and technologies. So its overall objective is to provide strategic investments into the deployment of digital infrastructures and technologies, contributing to the EU digital transformation. So one of the flagship strategies is the Digital Compass, here to mention, and to build the EU's digital autonomy and competitiveness on the global stage. So there are different strands of interest that could be relevant for you, in addition to the ones that we will mention, like high-performance computing, cyber security, or semiconductors. But we think relevance could be the cloud, data, and artificial intelligence strand, and then the advanced digital skills strand. So through these strands, different topics are being launched. But in general, what we can say about Digital Europe is that The project size is medium to large, average budget of 1.7 million euros. The competitiveness of the call, we don't have a success rate for that one. So it's pretty, it's a program that comes from this recent, from the ongoing programming period. So before 2020 was not existing with this name at least, but obviously digitalization was spread across different programs that now centralized in this one. So we recommend expert level for participating in this one. As management is not the easiest, given that the program favors the real cost calculation method and given the project budget dimension that we were mentioning. As we say, the dimension is from medium to large projects, but that means having a large amount of partners and managing several resources for the accomplishment of the activities. For that reason, not recommended for with limited experience. And given the scope of the program, the digital world, security, and ethic issues are essential and must be treated with great care when you prepare your proposition. When relevant, it is even advisable to include in the project design specific measures that can address these issues, such as the creation of an advisory committee that is dedicated to data protection and security issues. Okay. So that's about Digital Europe, and we move on to decentralized programs, Interreg.
Okay, so yes, now moving on to the decentralized programs. As we were mentioning, we wanted to explain a bit before getting into some examples of what Interreg is. So Interreg is a series of EU funding programs that support cooperation by bringing together organizations from across Europe and sometimes beyond. So sometimes there's other countries that can also access these programs. Just for you to have an idea of the dimension, there's been more than 390 Interreg programs since 2000. So you can imagine it's a very big thing. There's many different type of programs. Not all of them are accessible by everyone, so it depends on territory. And there are different programs for different cooperation regions. So each country has access to specific Interreg programs that take into account its region. For this programming period that we're still in, so for 2021-2027, Interreg focuses on the 7 thematic objectives that more or less are also spread across all different programs of this programming period, which are Smarter Europe, Greener Europe, More Connected, More Social, Safer, with a Better Government, and Europe for Citizens. So this is a bit of an overview on what Interreg is. To understand what programs can be accessible for your organization and for your countries, we really highly recommend keeping in mind and accessing this tool, this website, which is keep.eu. In the presentation, you have the link, but you can also just write keep.eu on Google and you'll find it. This is very, very useful because it has an easy way to not only find information by countries and regions, but here we wanted to show you an example of how to check which programs apply to you. So for example, if I'm a candidate from, I think, Lithuania, I cannot read it very well, but here we just add an example. So you select Lithuania, and then you get this detailed explanation and information on all the programs that existed or that exist or that are ongoing that as an organization based in Lithuania, you can access. And this is the same for any country you check. It's a very easy tool to use, and it helps you see not only the amount of Interreg programs, but to easily find the ones that apply to you, as Interreg works in this territorial cooperation way, where it's usually countries that form a region because they have similar challenges, similar issues, and the idea is to work on them in a cooperative way focus specifically on those challenges that affect only these countries. So it works a bit different than the thematic programs, and it has obviously different objectives. So we highly recommend you access this site if you're interested in Interreg, and you see which programs can apply to you. And you also have other information on this website, but this is a very useful thing to use. So as we were also mentioning before, as you know, there's been more than 390 programs on Interreg. We are not going to show you even all the ones that are open now or that still exist and are ongoing, but we wanted to show you some examples of Interreg programs that we thought might be useful for where your territories are, but also some of those that we have also participated in as Building, so we can also give you some more details. So some examples, the first one I would say is the Interreg Euromed, European Territorial Cooperation Program. So the Euromed program covers the Northern Mediterranean Sea. So projects must be implemented in one of the 69 Mediterranean regions. So the program focuses on regions, not as countries as such. So there's countries that have some regions that can apply and some regions that can't. So also this applies to other programs as well. So be careful when looking for example, if you're looking for programs that involve Lithuania, there might be some programs that involve several regions of Lithuania, but others not. So you have to check also where your organization is legally based, because that might be an eligibility requirement and it might allow you to access or not certain programs. So in the case of Interreg Euromed, it's those countries you see on screen. So you have to be implemented in one of the 69 Mediterranean regions of Albania, Bosnia, Herzegovina, Bulgaria, Croatia, Cyprus, France, Greece, Italy, Malta, Montenegro, Portugal, North Macedonia, Slovenia, and Spain. But again, as this is focused on challenges from the European, so the Northern Mediterranean Sea, there's not all regions of these countries that can access this program because it wouldn't make sense for them. So you have to carefully check if your organization is in one of these 69 regions, and then you can decide if you access or not. Then we have the Interreg NextMed program, so the transnational cooperation in the north and south of the Mediterranean. This program, if you don't know it yet, you might know it as the Interreg. Before being Interreg NextMed, it was the CBC Med program. So now it started forming part of the Interreg programming and it changed its name. But the core of the program, it's quite the same. So it's still this transnational cooperation in the whole of the Mediterranean. This is also a very interesting program. It's usually quite big projects, but they're very interesting and they tackle mostly challenges that affect these regions and these countries alongside the Mediterranean. So here you have the list of countries. As you see, it's not only Europe. So you have Cyprus, Egypt, France, Greece, Israel, Italy, Lebanon, Jordan, etc., etc. Again, if you are interested in any of these programs, make sure that you check before thinking of any project, check the eligibility requirements, check the territorial requirements, what partnerships are required, what regions are able to access, and then start thinking about your projects. And then we have another two that we wanted to share with you. Again, these are just examples. Depending on where you're based, there will be other Interreg programs that are much more useful to you. In this case, POCTEFA and SUDOE will probably only be interesting to entities that are connected today that are based in France or in Spain or in Portugal. But for other countries, you might check other Interreg programs. POCTEFA, for example, it's the cross-border area between France and Spain. So it's only that region in the cross-border area. So partners must come and the activities proposed in the project must be implemented again in one of the 15 cross-border regions. So in this case, it's Andorra, which only can access without financing, Spain and France, but again, not all Spain, not all France, only the specific regions that are mentioned. And then last but not least, we have Interreg Sudoe, which is the transnational cooperation in Southwest Europe. So we have Spain, France, Portugal, Andorra again, but without financing. So you have to check. In the case of Spain and Portugal, it is the whole country. But in the case of France, it only applies to certain regions in the south of France. So again, check carefully. Okay, so I think we went a bit quick, but that was it for the Interreg program. So let's open maybe a round of questions. Let's see if anything was unclear, and before going on to the break or to the next section, let's see if everything was clear or if there's anything you wanna comment. Yes, Eva, we'll share the presentation after the training. Any questions?
I think it was clear, but just to say that these Interreg programs that we were mentioning, so they concern let's say the southern territory of Europe, and they have this different dimension of cross borders. So that means that frontiers are in connection, but the same applies for all other regions in Europe, no, for Central, Eastern, and Northern. So if you go to the platform that Anna was mentioning at the beginning, the KEEP platform, and use your country of registration, here you can get access to the different programs that apply for your location. So this is important. Yeah, that's one question, I think. No. Or yes.
Yeah, in case of extended information, yeah, you can contact Marta and me after the meeting if there's any questions, or if everything's unclear, but we will share the full presentation and the training materials with you after the training. So you will have everything on there. But no worries, if you have other questions that you don't think of today, you can send us an email.
I think what we can do, Anna, is start a bit with the next presentation, and then we have the break. So we do the preparation stage 0 of what is coming now, and then we can.
And then we go on a break.
Yeah, we go on the break.